You're watching Notepad. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. I am currently in Bursa, Malaysia. As you can see, the bulls and the bear behind me. Because I am attending the virtual Series 2 Invest Malaysia 2020, powering Malaysia's economic growth engines. If you remember, a few weeks ago, we had the first series of Invest Malaysia 2020, where the Finance Minister, Senator Tengku Zafrul, was touching on a lot of issues, particularly when we talk about the short-term growth economic recovery. For this session, this event today, it was attended by YB Datuk Sri Mustapa Mohamad. He is the Minister in the Prime Minister's Department in charge of the economy. He was highlighting three big documents that will be presented by the government for the Malaysian understanding, which is of course the economic recovery, both short-term, medium-term and long-term. The second one will be on the 12th Malaysia Plan, and the third is Malaysia's budget. It's going to be happening very, very soon, in just a few months' time. In this speech that you're going to see, Tok Pa is going to address all the other issues surrounding the economic recovery, but more importantly, what it needs for the country to grow and move forward. Here is his speech. Take a look.
I would like to thank Bursa in particular and the organizers for inviting me to share my thoughts on infrastructure development this morning. The last 4 months, of course, have been the most trying and challenging for all of us. It was not a run-of-the-mill economic crisis like the previous three our country went through. It was a health crisis, as we all know, that affected every sector of the Malaysian economy. Some would add that there was also a political crisis late February. And now, just a few days past the 4-month mark since the MCO, I can confidently say to our capital market leaders and investors that the government is all hands on deck and addressing the economic issues arising from COVID-19. We've been lucky. A day after the new cabinet was sworn in on the 10th of March, the Prime Minister announced the setting up of the Economic Action Council, which was to meet weekly. The Prime Minister and his economic team, as well as Secretariat headed by Tan Sri Azlan, have been very focused in designing and implementing strategies to deal with our socio-economic challenges. To get to where we are today, there have been many engagements and very close coordination between all agencies in government, businesses and various organizations involved in the recovery process. Now, almost all economic sectors have reopened. Retail sales are increasing, and domestic tourists are slowly bringing life to the tourism sector. Ladies and gentlemen, the stock market, of course, is a very important barometer of the country's economic health. Stock market has shown some signs of life, of course, very exciting developments in gloves and palm oil as well, which my colleague will be sharing with you in the next few minutes. The FBM KLCI has crossed above the pre-COVID levels. Exports are up and running once again. It is now time to look forward. The 12th Malaysia Plan, which is to be presented to Parliament in the first quarter of 2021, will outline the key strategies and initiatives that will serve as guiding principles for Malaysia's economic policy in the next 5 years, and indeed beyond. The plan will be aligned with the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030, as well as the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, alleviating poverty, reducing income inequality, and bridging regional disparities, including disparities in infrastructure development, will be given the highest priority during the period 2021 to 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, since Merdeka, we have gone through a massive transformation. We have moved up from being a low-income country to a high middle-income country. In the region of physical infrastructure, our roads, highways, ports, railways, and airports are world-class. From a country defined by our unnavigable rainforests and dangerous swarms, we are now a country with sprawling highways, thriving airports, and bustling seaports. COVID, of course, has had some impact on activities in some of these locations. We have constructed over 200,000 kilometers of roads, 2,900 kilometers of railway, 22 airports, and 18 seaports. Malaysia is connected from north to south, east to west, and peninsula to Borneo. Infrastructure planning in the 11th Malaysia Plan, the plan we are now in, was aimed at balancing investments in roads, rail, ports, and air services, while at the same time improving the efficiency, productivity, and affordability of all these services, as well as enhancing user experience. The 12th plan will further expand on this strategy. There are a number of high-impact projects under construction, such as the Klang Valley Mass Rapid Transit Line 2, MRT2, Light Rail Transit Line 3, East Coast Rail Link, and the Pan-Borneo Highway. The Rapid Transit System, RTS, linking Johor Bahru and Singapore, hopefully will begin soon. We are also talking to our Singapore colleagues on the revival of the high-speed rail project. The implementation of all these projects will significantly improve connectivity in the country. Efficient transportation, excellent connectivity, and improved logistics are important for the next phase of Malaysia's development. In addition, there has to be better transport planning and enhanced coordination between agencies involved in the infrastructure sector. As a trading nation, better connectivity with the rest of the world is important and vital for our competitiveness and future economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, while we have done well in the most recent Ease of Doing Business ranking by the World Bank, moving up 3 notches from position number 15 to number 12 out of 190 countries. This is very commendable. The World Bank Logistics Performance Index, which is a benchmark identifying challenges and opportunities of countries on trade logistics, which is published biannually. In 2018, the last ranking among 160 countries, we ranked number 41, which is down 9 positions compared to the previous ranking in 2016. The infrastructure component, in particular, declined from 33 to number 40. The challenge going forward is to renew our commitment to improve the quantity and also the quality of our infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say a few words about public-private partnership. The public-private partnership approach has been a catalyst for greater private sector participation in the Malaysian economy. Under the 10th and 11th Malaysia plans, a facilitation fund of about 20 billion ringgit was established to catalyze private sector investment in a number of strategic areas. From the 20 billion allocated, 5 billion is being allocated for land acquisition, while the remaining 15 billion would act as a tipping point to help the private sector finance projects. It aims to help bridge the private sector viability gap with respect to projects that have a strategic impact and those with huge economic spillover effects. To date, 320 facilitation fund projects worth about 14.2 billion ringgit have been approved by this facility, the facilitation fund. The projects have created about 230 billion ringgit worth of economic activities. Going forward, we are reviewing this approach, in particular to ensure that this approach will continue to contribute towards the country's economic development. Of course, this will be done in the context of the financial situation of the country. Ladies and gentlemen, besides building new infrastructure, we must also increase allocation for maintenance. Our roads and highways, not to mention schools and some public buildings in general, are in need of better maintenance. Financial resources, of course, are not unlimited. However, we'll try our best to provide more allocation for the maintenance of infrastructure facilities. Going forward, the challenge for us is to remain competitive in the region and indeed the world. And to remain competitive, we need to continue improving the quality of both hard and soft infrastructure, as well as maintaining them to the best of our ability. Ladies and gentlemen, a few words about what's in store in the next few months. Firstly, there's going to be quite a number of documents going to be presented to the public. Yeah? There are 3 altogether. One is the economic recovery plan, the medium to long-term recovery plan, The short-term plan has been presented a few times by the Minister of Finance. And next, we've been working in the last few weeks on a medium to long-term recovery plan that will be presented in October 2020. Secondly, the budget on the 6th of November this year. And finally, the 12th Malaysia plan in the first quarter of 2021. These are three major documents which the government will be presented to the public. On the recovery plan, as I said, which we presented in October, this is an opportunity for us to have a hard look at some challenges we're facing, and this plan will address a number of reform measures. We'll be looking at the future of the workforce, we'll be looking at some labor market reforms, we'll be looking at quality investments, issue of quality investments, which have been discussed in the last few years. The digital economy, of course, is a very important component of the reform process. We'll be looking at the role of some public institutions and, of course, the role of the private sector in spearheading Malaysia's economic development going forward. So these are three major documents which will be presented to the public. This will be providing some guidelines for the long-term growth and sustainability of the Malaysian economy. These documents, of course, will be carefully followed by members of the private sector, and hopefully we'll be able to announce a number of major reforms and the long-term recovery plan to be presented in October this year, and this will set a firm foundation for the future growth and sustainable development of the Malaysian economy. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have, in summary, we have done a lot on this infrastructure front. Some of our facilities are world-class. Going forward, we'll be revisiting some of the approaches in infrastructure development. We acknowledge that infrastructure development is critical for the continued progress of this country. We acknowledge that there's a need to reduce the gaps between the various regions in the country. We acknowledge the fact that some parts of Malaysia require the provision of some very basic facilities which they've been lacking in the last decades. And we are in the process of looking at the overall macroeconomic situation, looking at our financial resources. And by the first quarter of next year, we'll be in a position to announce the total size of the 12th Malaysia plan allocation for the next 5 years. But it is our desire to continue improving our infrastructure. We acknowledge that infrastructure development is so critical for the continued development of the Malaysian economy. Once again, let me thank you for inviting me to say a few words in this very important seminar. Used to be attended by many hundred people. Now in this new normal, we have this approach, but I'm sure that this is going to be very meaningful in terms of sharing ideas on how we should move forward in reshaping the Malaysian economy post-COVID-19. On that note, once again, I thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts on the subject of infrastructure development, and my colleague will address the more sexy subject of gloves and palm oil as well in the next few minutes. Thank you, Tan Sri, and thank you, everyone. Thank you.
That was Tokpa giving that speech of his, touching on a lot of things, but more importantly, the three big documents that the government is going to present to the Malaysian public in the near months to come. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll have YB Willy Mongin, the Deputy Minister of Plantation and Commodities, touching about all the other issues regarding plantation as well. Don't go anywhere.